Hey guys, it's me. I am back with another video. Today I was going to do a video on Anthony Martinez, who is a boy who was kidnapped and raped from Beaumont, California, because I was talking to a friend who used to live around there, and he was telling me some of the details, and I thought it was an interesting case. But instead of just doing it on him, I'm actually going to do a whole video on his killer, because he had other victims and I was not aware of that. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. I have a bunch of note cards, lots and lots of note cards, because I just can't keep a coherent thought in my head for longer than like 2 seconds. So my apologies if I'm looking down a lot. I don't know what my problem is. Joseph Edward Duncan III was born on February 25th, 1963 in Tacoma, Washington. There's not really a lot of info on him as a child, but he was already getting in trouble with the law by the time he was 15 years old. In 1978, at 15 years old, he raped a 9-year-old boy at gunpoint. The following year, in 1979, he was arrested for driving a stolen car. He was sentenced as a juvenile and was sent to Island's Boys Ranch in Tacoma, Washington. During his time there, he admitted to a therapist working for the ranch that he had actually bound and sexually assaulted 6 boys, and he also admitted that he had raped 13 younger children by the time he was 16 years old. So at 16, he had more victims than a lot of serial killers have, which is just insane to me. And they just went ahead and let him go after he did his time. Then in 1980, in Tacoma, Washington, once again, Duncan ended up stealing a handful of guns from his neighbor. He then used those stolen guns to find a 14-year-old boy. He held him at gunpoint and he sodomized him. He was sentenced to 20 years for his crime and was released early in 1994, serving only 14 years. He was then arrested again in 1996 for marijuana use and possession. He was released on parole a few weeks later. On July 6, 1996, Sammy Jo White, age 11, and Carmen Cubis, age 9, disappeared after leaving a hotel they were staying in with their family to allegedly go buy their older brother cigarettes at 11 o'clock at night. Now, to me, that right there is just weird in general, because this is 1996. I didn't know you could still go and buy cigarettes for an adult, number one. Number two, who lets their 2 kids at 11 and 9 leave the hotel, leave the house, whatever, go out at 11 o'clock at night? So I'm assuming Big Brother was in charge of them. I'm not quite sure how that works. Anyways, they left and they were never seen again. Apparently what happened to the 2 girls was that Duncan approached them, told them that he had lost his kitten, and proceeded to kind of lure them over to a set of woods where he bludgeoned them to death. Their bodies were found almost 2 years later, in February of 1998. On April 4th, 1997, Anthony Martinez was playing behind his house with some friends and his older brother when a man approached them who said that he had lost his kitten. He showed the children his kitten and offered them some money. 2 of the kids ran away because they were scared, and that's when he pulled a switchblade out of his waistband, held it up to Anthony, and kidnapped him and sped off in a white car with red pinstripes. 15 days later, police noticed vultures were circling something in Purdue Canyon in Indio, California, about 70 miles away from Beaumont, California. Police found Anthony's body. It was in a shallow grave. They don't know if his goal was to cover him up with rocks, or if rocks had just fallen off of the mountain above him and covered his body from people hiking and moving and that kind of stuff. Police at this point had no leads for Anthony's family. On May 16th, 2015, in Kootenai County, Idaho, authorities discovered the bodies of Brenda Groen, aged 40, her fiancé, Mark McKenzie, age 37, and her son Slade, age 13. I'm going to go ahead and read this because they're hard to pronounce. They're found in their home on Lake Coeur d'Alene, outside of the city of Coeur d'Alene. But the scary part of that is 2 of her children were missing, Shasta and Dylan. Dylan was 9 years old and Shasta was 8 years old, completely gone. Police immediately put an Amber Alert out for Shasta and Dylan, and local authorities started looking into the case to figure out what happened. They concluded that it was indeed a homicide and that the victims died of blunt force trauma to the head. All of the victims were bound and gagged. 7 weeks later, in the early hours of July 2nd, 2005, Shasta was seen at a Denny's. A waitress and a few customers noticed Shasta because of all of the media coverage of her, and they immediately called the police and made it so that Duncan couldn't leave with her. Police then arrested Duncan. He put up no fight and he willingly went with the officers. Authorities and media immediately noticed that it was just Shasta that was with Duncan. Where's Dylan? And they proceeded to try and track Dylan down. At that point, Shasta was transported to a local hospital, Kootenai Medical Center in Idaho, for treatment and to be reunited with her father. Now, most of the details of the murders were actually found out through Shasta's testimony when the police asked her what had happened, since she was the only known survivor. She said that she'd been sleeping and she heard her mother calling her, so she got up, went into the living room, and she saw Duncan standing there with black gloves on. He then decided to use zip ties to tie up her mom, her stepdad, and her older brother. He proceeded to take Dylan and Shasta and put them in a red Jeep Cherokee that was parked outside. He then went back into the house. Shasta only remembers hearing her mom's fiance scream, and then she saw her 13-year-old brother Slade stumble away from the front door. She then took Shasta and Dylan in that red Jeep Cherokee, and she just remembers driving for a really long time and that they had camped out in 2 different campsites in 2 different locations that were far away from each other. Neither Shasta or Dylan witnessed the actual murders, but Duncan told them that he beat them to death with a hammer, so that's what they knew. He then held them hostage for 6 weeks while he repeatedly molested both of them. A few days later, Dylan's body was found in a remote wooded area of Montana on July 10th, 2005. Duncan's arrest led the FBI to launch a nationwide search for missing and exploited children to see if there were any leads on other cases. He was actually a possible suspect in a bunch of crimes that occurred from 95 to 97, and also crimes that occurred from 2000 to 2005. It's just there wasn't enough evidence to convict him, so he was let off. Although he was cleared of those crimes, he was still charged for the crimes of Shasta's parents and her older brother, her brother Dylan, Anthony Martinez, and the 2 girls he lured into the woods, Sammy Jo and Carmen. I'm going to go ahead and read this stuff because it's kind of complicated to explain, so I'm going to look down. I'm sorry. Duncan has been convicted by 3 separate courts. First in the state of Idaho for Brenda and Slade, then for Mark McKenzie in a separate trial. The second by the U.S. federal court for the kidnapping of Shasta and Dylan and the murder of Dylan with various other crimes, including kidnapping, possession of a stolen vehicle, evading police, all of those kind of things. The third trial was the state in California for the kidnapping and murder of Anthony Martinez. So on July 13th, 2005, he was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of first-degree kidnapping. After being postponed multiple times, Duncan finally went to trial on October 16th, 2006. They reached a plea agreement. Duncan pled guilty to all state charges and was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole for the 3 kidnapping charges, and he was sentenced on the murder charges, but was continued pending the outcome of his federal charges on kidnapping and murder, depending on what California decided to do. The judge in California said that if he didn't receive the death penalty in the federal charges, that he would return to Kootenai County for a death penalty phase on the state charges, if that makes any sense to you. It's a bit confusing. So on January 8th, 2007, Duncan was indicted by a federal grand jury on 10 counts of kidnapping, kidnapping resulting in death, and other crimes. On December 3rd, 2007, Duncan pled guilty to all 10 charges. On August 27th, 2008, after 3 hours of deliberation, the jury recommended the death penalty. He was sentenced to 3 death sentences. On November 3rd, 2008, Duncan was sentenced to another 3 life sentences for kidnapping Shasta and Dylan and killing Dylan. On March 15th, 2011, Duncan then pled guilty to Anthony Martinez's murder. Duncan is incarcerated at the United States Penitentiary, Terre Haute in Indiana. He's in the Terre Haute House Special Containment Unit. So that's pretty much it. This was kind of a hard one for me, just because it talks about the murder of children and the rape of children. That one always gets me. Obviously, I have 2 boys who are 3 years old, and I couldn't imagine something like that happening. I am that paranoid mom in the store. I am that paranoid mom in public. I do not want anything to happen to my kids. It's my biggest fear. So thank you so much for watching this, you guys. I'll go ahead and see you guys in the next one. I hope. Please go ahead, comment, like, subscribe, share, everything. Hit the notification bell. I really, really, really want to get to know you guys. I really, really want you guys to stick around and become part of my channel. I'll talk to you later. Bye.